Good morning, afternoon, evening, night, whenever it may be. As you might notice by the tone of my voice and this yellowish light coming on me, it is early in the morning. It's not that early, it's 6:15. But I'm back at it. It's Tuesday morning, but I will be talking about Monday morning, week 5, day 1, day 21 over the whole process, October 6th, 2025. Yeah, so I'm just gonna walk you through it as I always do. We started out with a warm up. I don't think I've been talking a ton about my warm ups, and I want to make that more a part of it because they are required. So I showed up at the John Wood. I always get there early. I was there like 8:40 ish. But there was a couple of students who had booked the room before our warm up, so I just hung out in the hall outside of the room. And then we had our warm up from 8:30 to, I mean, from 9:30 to 9:50. They took roll. It was great. And then we had practical voice with Jess. Misties. Um, and that was great. We started out by reviewing a little bit on our outlandish homework, which is just like speaking with all the sounds that we can make, right? Like, what would you, kind of things. Um, and the process of like, oh, we kind of find ourselves falling into patterns, but we need to really express like the whole sounds and all that we're capable of. Just like explore um, our mouths' articulability, the ability we have to articulate with our mouth and our teeth and our tongues and our soft palate and our uvula, right? Like the of French and German is a uvular trill. We'll get to that. But yeah, and then yeah, we talked about making specific choices to break these patterns. And adults have forgotten how to play. So we are relearning in this process because that opens up possibilities and imagination and helps us to buy in to the imaginary circumstances of a scene. And then with accents and dialects, I think I've mentioned this before, but the ear plays a role, but we really need to know the actual physical things happening. So when the ear fails us and we can't just listen and repeat, we um, can look up, oh, that's in this region of the mouth with these articulators. And then we did a warm up. We walked around and then we felt by like leading with our head and our nose or our chin, like which part of our head, and then leading with our pelvis and kind of our hips, and then our neck. How do you lead from your neck, right? And then always noticing our breath and trying to relax our jaw. Then we did a spine roll, starting with a flop and a sigh, which flopped over. And um, the way she mentioned it, she said planting a sigh of relief into the ground, and then as we came up, we did an out breath on a shh to kind of release all that tension, all that stuff. Then we took our spines for a walk and thought about kind of how does it feel to walk from your spine, right? That whatever movements you make while you walk, it's all your spine. It comes from your spine. Your spine is the core of your body. And so everything is attached to that, your head, your arms, your legs, it's all from your spine. And so how does that change the way you move? And then we pushed our breath out in different directions. I might be doing this in a different order, but I had to write some of these things afterwards. The very practical things we do, I write them down afterwards, so the order might not be exactly right, but it shouldn't matter. So we Push our breath in. Right, kind of thinking about all our different planes and axes. Like I was mentioning, oh no, I'll mention that later. We were doing some axis work today. We did a movement too. But like how can you push your voice but still be intentional without being like forceful and really like tensing up when you do it? And as we pushed our breath out in different directions, we did it on an F sound first, so non-vocalized, and then on a V sound, right? And then on V with a vowel, va, vu, vi, vum, right? We really focused on that direction, kind of like picked a spot and pushed our breath out towards it with the arms. Um, then we also stretched sides of our body, pushing our heel into the ground and this little pommel of our hands up. So as our feet were literally going like pushing our heel into the ground, we were pushing the pommel of our hand in the air, and then on the same side. So I'll show you. So I'm pushing down with my heel and stretching and then moving with that. Yeah, kind of a deal. And so, um, and we also, I don't know exactly where this fit in, but we, as we were walking around at some point, um, addressed people. I think this was afterwards. Yeah, after we pushed, we rolled a sound. It sounds kind of goofy when you just talk about what you're doing, but it's helpful to get into your body and to take away the apprehension of play and the apprehension of doing things. So you walk and we like rolled a what was the first one? I think it was on a so we would walk around and see someone and then that turned into a hey. Then we tried doing it overhead. Hey, hey. And then we did it with both hands too. Hey, and saw how that changed how we were doing it. Then we reviewed our experience and our warm up with a partner and just kind of talked about what it was like and what we learned and what we experienced. And it was cool. I enjoyed it. Then we got some handouts. Um, this was our handout. This is Under Milkwood by Dylan Thomas. And so it's kind of nonsensical, but it's all about like the sound and the articulator. So there's the clip clop of horses on the sun honeyed cobbles of the humming streets, hammering of horseshoes, gobble, quack, and crack and cackle, tom tit twitter of the bird bounced boughs, braying on donkey down. Bread is baking, pigs are grunting, chop goes the butcher, milk churns bell, tills ring, sheep cough, dogs shout, saws sing. Oh, the spring whinny and morning moo from the clog dancing farms, the gulls gab and rabble on the boat bobbing river and seas and sea, and the cockles bubbling in the sand, scamper of sanderlings, curlew cry, crow caw, pigeon coo, quack strike, bull bellow, and the ragged gabble of the bear garden school, as the women scratch and babble in Mrs. Morgan's general shop where everything is sold. Custard, buckets, henna, rat traps, shrimp nets, sugar, stamps, confetti, paraffin, hatchets, whistles. So that's the whole thing. So it's just all these different sounds and alliterations and everything. So we did that, and then we walked around as we spoke it. And then I just had this realization because we've been doing a very felt approach to voice. We've been vocalizing and getting it in our bodies and doing outlandish. And oh, we also did a jaw release, a professional jaw release, which is where you put pressure on your temporalis muscles. You hook your thumbs behind your ears and just run down your jaw, which is delightful. And really helps you kind of like loosen up. Oh, we also, was that this class? Yeah. Yeah, we woke up our bodies. And so we were like tapping our arms. See, I'm remembering more things. Um, and then tapping our heads and our scalp and just like waking and physically interacting with our body. That was part of our warm up as well. I should write that down. So I share notes with another student. And so I'm always trying to get these things right. I'll do that later. Okay. And so, yeah, but we've been having this very physical, experiential feeling and doing part of of learning. And now we're gonna kind of like move into a more intellectual, more mindy thing, which I realized I prefer. It's interesting because I think of myself as a physical actor, but I much prefer the the intellectual study and work. I much prefer getting a piece of paper and learning things and taking notes. And I don't know if that's just the way I'm a student, so I enjoy that more. Who knows when it's applying to an actual character? I don't know. I feel, shout out Sandridge. I feel like in high school I was very much a feely person. You know, you can kind of categorize these things in like Harry Potter houses, right? I was very Hufflepuff and feeling forward, and I wasn't much of a scholar or someone who focused on those things. But then I don't know when it changed, but logic and the intellectual and reading and all of that mind work, that Ravenclaw stuff seems much more important to me now, which I thought was interesting. So then we started looking at, we started sitting down and she drew a picture of the face, like the whole inner mouth world, the whole thing here with all of the articulators and all of the places, and we went through identifying them right with the lips and the teeth and the alveolar ridge, which is just the gum ridge, and the soft palate, which is the velum, and the right the nasal cavity and the epiglottis and the pharynx, pharynx. Am I saying that right? Pharynx, yeah, and larynx, vocal folds, and just like working our way through the mouth. Um, and then we were talking about where we can have closures, right? We can have them with like our teeth, our lips first. Uh, right? How can you stop the sound? Um, right? Lips and lips together. Teeth. Has tongue and teeth, gum ridge, all these different places. Like, where can you stop the sound if you're just producing sound? Right? That's with my like back body of my tongue up with my soft palate or the velum. And this is just realizing where we can create plosives, which is a full stop of the sound. And we kind of walked through um, mapping obstructions, right? Obstructions are just kind of like what consonants are. But when we think of consonants, we just think of our English terms. And so we think of B's and T's and all of those instead of just what is actually being created. So we focus on obstructions. And there are three things that determine a sound, right? There's first the voice. Is it voiced or non-voiced? Like vocalized or not vocalized? Think of an F versus a V, right? The only difference, the whole mouth shape is the same. It's just, are you producing vibrations with your vocal cords or not? Um, then there's the place, where, and what articulators are being used, right? Um, the, 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 the. Like the and the are the same, like the same action, but at different parts in your mouth. So it's like the is dental, right? So that's the tongue and the teeth. The, and it's vocalized, right? And then, or voiced. And then the is alveolar. It's the tongue and the gum ridge, at least for me. And that's the D sound, but it's still voiced. And then thirdly is the manner, right? Think of the difference between a b, b. That's a plosive. That's a plosive voiced, bilabial voiced plosive. B, the B sound. But if you did the B like repeatedly, you get a lip trill, a bilabial trill. So those are three things: voice, place, manner. And then we started breaking down what these are. I'm going to tell you the technical terms, and then I'll say like what are the different manners, right? So there's plosive, which is a complete stop. Nasal, it's where you redirect the sound to your nasal, like mm, 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 right? All the sounds, the air is getting blocked in your mouth until you let it out your nose. A trill, right? Those kind of sounds. There's a tap or a flap, like the R in Italian or Spanish. Para, da, 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 para, para. It's just like really quick data. Fricative, it's where that friction is created, like with a V. It's not like kind of trilling, but there's this friction that's created, which helps create the sound. Lateral fricative, like on a bilateral, lateral, lateral, that L sound from Sid the Sloth, that'd be lateral fricative. Then there's an approximant, like you're almost closing, but you're not quite. Wah, 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 like a W. Then there's lateral approximant, which is one sound. What was it? L, w, w, I can't remember what it was, but she said we're almost, there's only one sound that she knows that uses it, and it's almost like I don't know exactly what it is. It might be dialectically specific. Anyway, so then we started working through that, and then our homework is just to look up the an interactive IPA chart. So this is the chart when we started filling out a little bit, and then we got into groups and like went through these sounds. We only had 10 minutes, so we weren't able to get through all of them. But all of the ones that I just mentioned are pulmonic consonants, meaning that it's produced with air from the lungs, right? Non-pulmonic consonants can be like clicks and right. You don't need air for those. And then also there's ones that air is taken in, instead of blown out. We haven't really learned those quite yet. But yeah, then, yeah. And then we looked at under Milkwood again, and there were three different versions. There's focusing on the alliterations, there's focusing on the assonance, um, which is repeated vowel sounds, right? Alliteration is repeated consonant sounds, clip, clop, humming, hammering, horse, shoes, right? And then assonance is vowel sounds, right? Clop, honeyed, cobble, quack, cackle, twit, tit, bounced, bows, bray. Bray doesn't really fit that one. Anyway, and then we looked at just like repeated consonants or just repeated consonant sounds like clip, clop, horses, sunny, honeyed, cobble, gobble, humming, hammering, right? That kind of idea. Horse, shoes. And so, and then I volunteered and I read it again with very purposeful intent and focusing on what we'd learned. And then everybody kind of repeated the words that they liked. And that wrapped up voice. It was lovely. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Then we had the always lovely um, Lawrence. And what we did in Lawrence's class was great. So first thing he talked about creating an actor's notebook, and I created it in class. So normally you'd probably want a bigger notebook than this, just so you have more room to take notes. But what you do is you photocopy your script and you put it on one side so that the other side can be for notes. And then the next page, and then the next page, and then the next page. And then I think this is the last page. The last page, right? And that way, there's only so much room on your script, but this way you can really get into it and break things down and take notes on it. So create an actor's notebook, photocopy the script, put one page on the left side and leave the right side blank, and then take notes. Lawrence took roll. And then we were working on the process, right? It's not the finished or polished performance. It's about detail found in my analysis and my work, right? That details what's important. It doesn't matter about the product of the process during the process. And so we're focusing on the process. Most of school is focusing on the process. That's what education is. It's learning how to do the process so that you can take it into a product afterwards. And just because you've learned a process, but it doesn't work for you, don't do it, right? Right now we're in school, so we're focusing on doing being overly detailed and overly specific in so many different things. Um, but that's just so that we have more tools and ability. Like we're just trying to expand our horizons and understand things more before we get into finding out what works for us, right? So because what we're doing is extremely tedious. Once I break down exactly what we did today, yesterday, there's just not the time or ability to do that for every project, especially if there's a quick turnaround. So if it doesn't work for you, don't use it. And I liked that. Okay. Right now we do everything to expand ourselves, and so we find what works for us. If it's not useful, don't use it. Don't do what you think you should be doing. Do what works. You can still enjoy and engage with something even if you don't understand it. One of the students brought up the fact that parsing, like breaking down the understanding, is so difficult, especially when they're alone. Like when they're in the class, it kind of makes more sense. They're like, "Oh, I see where we're getting this from." But when they're alone, they're just like, "Yeah, I don't know. What do you do?" And so Lawrence said, "Don't let that stop you from engaging with it. You know, you can still enjoy something, engage with it, even if you don't understand every word. And so keep working at it, and things will come, right?" Um, And then think of this as as an adventure of exploration more than uh, a destination, a road to a destination, right? The exploration, the adventure is what's fun. You don't know where you're going or what you're gonna find there, but that's what's exciting. Instead of trying to get as quickly to a destination of success or understanding all of these things, right? And then also he refocused us on the idea of whenever we're struggling and getting lost in the syntax or lost in the technical side of things, just ground yourself in the question of who am I? Don't get lost in tactics and but focus on understanding your character based on who they are, right? Who are they? What do they want? That's always the basic. Come back to it. The whole process is Oh yeah, the whole process is still beneficial because there'll be a lot of times where you go home, you do your work, you write out all your tactics, and you've done all this work, and then you come to rehearsal, and then your impulses are different, or the actor or your scene partner is giving you different things, and then it feels like, well, I wasted all that time. No, all that work is still beneficial to you. There is no wrong work and preparation that you can be doing because even if you come to new conclusions, all that work will still influence and inform your character. And you shouldn't throw it away because that's all good work. Always return to who am I? Where am I? What do I want? Right? Look at how these characters are negotiating, right? It's like tennis, right? What do they want and how are they trying to get that thing because of who they are? And then Oh, and also in the real world, your degree of intelligence, your degrees and your intelligence don't matter. You're not going to get cast for a role just because you have a certain degree or you understand the entirety of a play or this or that. You're going to get cast if you look right for the part and if you have the talent to pull it off, right? I think more of skill. Talent to me feels innate. I think you're born with gifts and talents or like inclinations for success. Or skill. Do you have the skill? The ability, let's say. That encompasses both. And then um, we went into our practice groups and we started working then. And what we did, ha ha ha. So we started back at the beginning and we started with the two characters. It's just Olivia and Viola. We had one person stand in for Mariah at one point, which apparently is the way you pronounce that, even though it's spelled like Maria. And both characters at the beginning need to state their scenic objectives. So Viola is to make um, Olivia fall in love with Orsino to make him happy, something like that. And then Olivia's is to end all correspondence with Orsino, right? And then remember, all of these little things are our units. So we have, well, Maria entering is also a unit, but give me my veil is a unit. Come throw it over my face is a unit. Will once more hear Orsino's embassy is a unit. Okay. And so what we had to do is at the beginning of the unit, um, we we stated the objective and the tactic. And so you want to state the objective as an I want, right? Because that keeps you in the character, it keeps you focused. So I'm going to go to one that I actually worked on. Okay. I played Olivia, and it's if I do not usurp. Lauren says to pronounce the Z sound in usurp, even though it's an English thing to do. But I'm trusting him at this point. I'm just going to do what he says. That's the way. If I do not usurp myself, I am. And so Violet just asked, are you the lady of the house? And so here comes my line. If I do not usurp myself, I am. And then each comma or punctuation shows that it's a new tactic. So I start by saying, I want to embarrass him to insult. So I want to embarrass him. That's the objective. To insult. That's the tactic. So I want to embarrass him. To insult. If I do not usurp myself, then there's a comma. So a new tactic. You don't have to restate the objective, but just a tactic. To submit. I am. And then Viola has a 3 unit little speech. And each unit where your character does not speak, you need a thought. So Viola says, most certain. And Viola would have gone in in great detail saying objective for this unit, and then a tactic, most certain, new tactic. If you are she, new tactic. You do usurp yourself, new tactic. For what is yours to bestow is not yours to reserve. And that's 1 unit. And then Olivia would say, the nerve or whatever. And thought should be more based on impulse. In listening, what does your character feel and think? And then new objective and new tactic from Viola. But this is from my commission. And then Olivia's thought, because that's the end of the unit. Get on with it then. Then new objective and tactic. I want this to that. I will on with my speech in your praise. New tactic. I then show you the heart of my message. End of unit. Viola's thought. Um, hurry up. And it shouldn't be the same. Also, you don't want to use a tactic, the same tactic multiple times in a single unit. Should always be changing because that one didn't work, right? And then, yeah, Olivia says, come to what is important and I forgive you the praise. And you would have done the tactic and everything. So we did that with each line, with each pair in the whole class. And that's what we did for the majority of the class, like an hour and a half. And we got through like 3 lines, 4 lines maybe, but we were really just breaking down it. So some things that I learned as we were writing this down: you can't repeat the same tactic in a unit. Keep tactics as psychological, not physical. If it's to extend an olive branch, that's kind of a physical idea. To surrender or um, to speak. Also, you want to keep them specific. So to, like, if you're saying to punch or to jab, well, what are you trying to do with that? Well, you're trying to hurt them. You're trying to disarm them. You're trying to, like, psychologically, that's what's important. Oh, and with all these things, you wanted to keep it fluid. Like, I want to embarrass him, to shame. I want to this, to that. I want to this, to that. And that's how you go through the whole thing. Because it keeps you in character. Uh, then repeated units without. Oh, afterwards, after with some of them, I think it might have just been the first group. Um, after you've done that a few times, try it without saying I want to, and just say it with the same coloring. And I just wrote, like, this is difficult and tedious work, and I need to do some more of the work myself. I got to write it all down because I didn't have my tactics and objectives written down. I had them thought out, which was not sufficient. Um, Stating objectives and tactics as I want, and 2, keeps you in the character. Tactics are playable actions. If you don't speak in a unit, Lawrence wants you to have a thought decided for each unit. Talked about that. Lists need tactics for each item, right? Anytime there's punctuation or comma, it requires a new tactic. And search for detail and specificity. Always do this as the character, stay in it. Always play tactics to their full extent, right? You don't want to beg and say, please let me. right? If you're begging, beg, please, please, you know. When Lawrence says more from a tactic, he means that we aren't engaging fully with the stakes. And then this is all about clarifying playable action so that we can be detailed and specific in all of our choices. It's great, literal specific work. I loved class. It was so wonderful. It just made sense to me. Um, there's just a funny little quote that was said um, that one of the actors was trying to play disbelief, and they're like, to disbelieve Lawrence with these words? And that's the trick of it, you know. Sometimes that's what you're trying to accomplish, but the script almost doesn't lean itself to that. And so you have to practice how can you color this with that intent and with that impulse and tactic. And it's a great challenge, and it's wonderful. And it really, it's we're not doing that right now, but it's really great for subtextual things. And then we are repeatedly doing this tedious work, going slowly and methodically. This difficult, tedious repetition is so helpful to ingrain these processes into our mind and to be able to adapt them to our future process. I think that's great. We can't use the same tactic in a single unit, mention that. And then thoughts in unlined units are impulses, but keep you engaged and connected through. So the thoughts that the character adds when they don't have a line in a unit, that helps you stay connected, engaged, and in the scene. And then our homework is we're going to just make sure we have all of this work for that whole, what is it, 4 pages? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. The fifth page doesn't really count. That's kind of a separate scene. It's a new French scene, if nothing else, because Viola leaves and she's like, "What is your parentage?" I always think of the actor who's playing that role in our scenes. What is your parentage? It's really fun. Anyway, moving on. Oh, also we had lunch after voice, and we talked about a Scotland trip, which I think we're going to Scotland for reading week, which is going to be so fun. We're going to do Edinburgh and Glasgow. I'm excited. Alas. So lastly was movement. And I got in trouble for writing notes. And I'm struggling a little bit with this because it's my process of how I learn and understand things. And I need to check my learning agreement, which is just like I said, hey, I had ADHD and I struggle to pay attention sometimes and I get distracted and I forget things. And so um I think I had something about taking notes on there, but I'm worried that I won't have that option because I just forget things and I want to make sure that I'm remembering things, which is partially why I'm doing this. This is a documentation and a journal and a memory of what it is I'm doing because I plan to teach in the future potentially, and I want to be able to go back and be like, oh, what did I learn here, and how did I do these activities and these warm-ups, and how do I apply that, and what were the principles? And writing it down, second notebook, um, helps ingrain it in my mind, and then talking about it helps me process it. So we'll figure it out. Anyway, movement with Nicoletta. So first we stepped in, we were feeling our bodies. We really like kind of like grabbed and massaged and felt like our whole bodies. It was kind of what we did with Jess, where we were rubbing our bodies, waking them up, but it was like more firm, more invigorating, just like really increasing that blood flow. Um, and then we walked around and increased, and we were trying to increase um, our awareness. So we walked, right? Because that's what we do in our classes. We walk and we get in the space and we have a feeling for it. And then the goal was to jump at the same time. Just have this ensemble awareness using your peripherals. And still we were playing we do play these games and do these tasks of like following people, stopping, going between them, um, creating these moments. I can't remember what they're called, pauses. I don't know, but it's like you have a moment with multiple people and then it disperses. So we're playing all these games and doing all these things, but while trying to increase our awareness of the whole group and jumping together. And we were not good at it. We're good at starting together. We're not good at stopping together. We're not good at anything that's like an abrupt change, like a jump or a stop. We struggle with. And it's interesting. There's a couple times where it felt like, oh, we should go, but nobody did. And I don't want to just like start because I don't think the idea I feel like is that there isn't a leader per se, but it just has this impulse of everyone. So I was trying to wait and feel it. But alas, um, we tried to jump 3 times and we did okay. Nothing to write home about. And then collectively, we must find a shift and gain that kind of hive mind. We don't want a ripple as much as we want collective decision. That's just so cool, you know. We're getting there a little bit, but we'll see. Um, right, there are these tendencies maybe to be the first to jump, or to like kind of get people up. And there's these tendencies in all our movements, but this class and what we're trying to do is to break those tendencies and habits and to be freer and be available and be and have these options. Then another activity, um, is we had these encounters. Yes. So what we did is we would, did that happen at this point? I think I wrote about these later. Yeah. So we had these encounters, in which we would walk, and then we would look at each other, stop, and then do a 180 and like separate, but trying to have like big lunges and big movements or just like committed, it could be like, and then just change. And so we were doing that, and then Nicoletta added um what you would call it, a circumstance to it. So the first circumstance was like, it was kind of like a busy train station or a busy street, and we were late for work. We were trying to get to work, so that increased the pace. And then we were trying to move away from that. And then to get very different, it was a beach vacation, so it was more laid back. But we don't want to be like, like disengaged. We still wanted to be in it, and then that changed things. And then we did like a church building and we were like monks and priests. And so that changed things. And then we got small and quiet. And then we added like voice to some of these and just saw how we could have these different things. And then what happens when you break the rule? Like someone yells or goes, blah, 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 right? Something that is against the circumstance. How does that affect us? And then we, um, once again, not sure if this is the order. I had to write this afterwards, but we we focused really strongly on our axes, right? So we have an up and down axis, we have a front and back axis, and we have a side to side axis, right? Boom, boom, boom. So, um, so we focused first on just the vertical axis, and we were trying to lead with different parts of our body, like our head. And it didn't have to be like perfect, right? That wasn't the point, but it was the idea of working on this axis. So if your head is like going up and that's leading, which part of your head are you leading with? Right? Is it your forehead? Is it your nose? Is it your chin? Right? Is it the crown of your head? What are you leading with? And how does that help you move between the up and down axis? And then isolating our chests, and then our pelvis and kind of our core, and how does that move you around? And then we added the front and back axis and saw how that changed us. And then leading again with different parts, with the head, with the chest, with the core. And then eventually and when we saw like how our body follows it, like even though your head is leading and the head's the one in control. How do your arms respond to that, right? It doesn't have to be like your head is leading, only your head is there. Um, and then how then we when we added the lateral, it just like took us all around and onto the floor and up and down. And so that just took us all around the space, and it was cool. I feel limited by the capabilities of my body. I feel like I'm not very flexible, and I don't have a lot of core strength and just general strength that I used to have. So I feel limited by the movements I can do, but I'm trying to engage, be present. And then um, we paired up and we sat in chairs. And so I don't know how to explain this well, but if this was one chair, the other chair was faced like this. So like if you were facing each other, but then offset in here, that worked. And then what you were doing is one person would put their hand on the other person's shoulder. And then the person whose shoulder was being touched would breathe and see how that breath moved them. And they kind of just went with it. And then the person holding on would respond. How did that move them? And at the beginning, I was the breather. And I stayed in my seat. She said you could get up, you could move. We started with our eyes closed, but if you like got up, you can open your eyes and see how you disconnect physically, but stay connected physically. Be connected without physically touching, you know? And so the first time I stayed in my seat the whole time and just kind of explored that, but I was using my legs and getting into it. And then when we switched with my partner, she started and did a lot in the chair, but then she got up and moved, and that one was a much longer. And it was this dance, it was this movement. It was cool. I liked it. Um, yeah, and that was kind of what we did to end the class, and it was enjoyable. It was a good class. I'm struggling with movement. Sorry, so something going. I'm struggling a little bit with the movement classes, but I was loving the technical stuff today. I was loving Lawrence's class. I was loving the IPA charts with Jess. I'm a very mindy person, I guess, but I want to reconnect with the physical. But all is well. Today, as in Thursday, no, Tuesday, we get to do scene study, and I'm really excited to work on Midsummer. Anyway, hope you have a wonderful day. Happy life. Love you guys. Bye.